Hello and welcome to another episode of Far Five with Phoenix. I am joined this evening by two guests. This is the first, two guests, the guys from Three Peeps in a Podcast. If you haven't tuned into these before, the concept is fairly simple. We have a topic each month. This month, the theme is goals, and I have a guest each week. This week, we have sneaked in an extra guest. Buy one, get one free this week. So a guest comes in with five questions on that topic that I haven't seen before. And they will ask me the questions. I will do my best to answer them, and we will possibly have some conversation around what comes up with those questions and answers. So as I said, I am joined this evening by the guys from Three Peeps in a Podcast. So Patch and Rich, guys, introduce yourselves.
Well, shall I go first, Rich?
I'm Patch, you're the head of the family.
Thank you. Patch Warner from Three Peeps in a Podcast, and Zoe was our guest back early in January. So thank you again, Zoe, for coming on, and do have a listen back to that. So we've been going as a podcast now. This is our 6th year. And we are on episode 145, so plenty to listen through in the archives. And it's the podcast is no one topic. You really don't we don't know what we're going to talk about from 1 minute to the next, but we do get guests on, either people in business, people starting out in the restaurant business. We're quite big on street food as well, so we've got a regular guest slots for people like Ice Cream Tacos, Chef Anton, and Gert Wings, and we had Cypress Kitchen on as well, another foodie. But yeah, we've had local celebrities, we've helped launch places, we've been involved in the launch of David Lloyd and Emerson's Green. So yeah, really, Mike described it. Mike is the third Peep, and unfortunately we lost him to cancer back in May last year. And he always described the podcast as tangent heavy, and that's from show to show, and also within the episodes as well. But we've also actually started it just under a year ago, a bonus show which is all about Bristol City. So any Bristol City fans out there, check out the bonus show. It's all under the same banner, available on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get a podcast. But yeah, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at 3PIAPC on Twitter. And I'll tee up Rich now. So Rich obviously is a fellow Peep, and Rich is a professional ranter. He is he's 49 years young, doesn't look it. That's sort of his party trick. But Rich, what do you bring to the podcast?
I guess I can be really, Patch, but as it's a podcast, that's quite easy to do. No, I like to think I bring a bit of humour, kind of you're the serious one, you're the main driving force, but I like to kind of wind you up now and again by putting the rug between under your feet and just seeing where it goes from there. But I'm proud to be a founder member of this great podcast of ours, obviously, as Patch mentioned with Michael. But no, we really enjoy it. Obviously, during these lockdown times, it's a good chance for me and Patch to kind of have a little chat with each other. So it's just, and obviously, like as you said, we have some great guests recently. So no, I just really enjoy it, and it gets me away from the wife and kids for a few hours. So that's a bonus. Until they start photobombing in the background, which they did last time. So.
Yeah.
So between the three of us, we've got tangent, rants, and a waffler. This could be a very interesting episode. So as you mentioned, I came on your podcast earlier on this month, and it seemed only fair to invite you back. I'm slightly worried that there might be some geography questions in there. So if you want to know what that's about, you will need to check out the podcast. But it's fair to say that I embarrassed myself in not being able to name very many cities. And once I'd exhausted the basketball league, I was done for. So it's something that's now on my bucket list to polish up on. So tonight, the guys are going to be asking me more questions. And this time on the topic of goals. So they assure me that they have 5 questions to ask. So I'm intrigued as to what the two of you have come up with. But do you want to shoot with the first?
Yeah, well, the first the first battle was explaining to Rich that this was about goals, in life rather than goals the five-a-side place. So we got past that hurdle.
That's my first question.
Oh, sorry about that, Rich. So my first question to you, Zoe, is take yourself back to secondary school. And I don't know about you, but we had a careers person that sat down and did a questionnaire, and it spat out that you should become a farmer or an artist or something. And my question is, what would you say to children that are now finishing up in school or college who don't know what they want to do, and how can they set a goal?
So interestingly, the careers advisor that I had was quite adamant that I needed to go to university, that I wouldn't have any career opportunities unless I went to university. And that was something that I really wasn't keen on doing. I love learning, but not classroom-based learning. I'm much more of an active learner. And interestingly, all I ever wanted to do was be in the police, be a police officer. And as you know, I did 20 years with the police, but never as a police officer. So lots of different jobs, lots of different opportunities within that organisation. I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but that actually didn't work out. But I had some amazing opportunities, even though Plan A didn't work. I think now the world is moving so quickly, and I think the world of work is moving so quickly. I mean, it was moving quickly anyway, but when you look at everything that's been happening over the last 12 months, remote working, being able to work at home, lots of things going online, there's lots of opportunities that didn't exist 12 months ago that exist now. So I think for young people now, I think it's about looking at what's important to you, what are you passionate about, what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing? Where do you enjoy spending your time? What do you get lots from? Know what that is. Know what's important to you. Know where your strengths are. Know where you like to spend your time, but keep the focus on what your next step is. Because so many of these things, whether it's GCSE choices to A-level choices to university choices or job choices, quite often that's the next step. It's a stepping stone to something else. And I think it's very easy to try and work out what other opportunities that might open up. And we don't always know what those are going to be. So certainly conversations I've had with my son, who's 18, sort of making his choices, is, okay, know what you enjoy doing, know where you enjoy spending your time, know what you're good at, and just look at what the next step is and do what you can to be your best at the next step. And that in itself will bring lots of opportunities. So I think if you're going to university now and it's a 4-year course, the chances are there's going to be jobs that are created in the next couple of years that don't exist at the moment, especially in terms of technology and science and all of those amazing things that the world moves really quickly with. And I think just focus on, those things that I've mentioned, just the next step, because the world's moving really quickly. But also do what you're passionate about. Do what fulfills that purpose. We spend a lot of time in work. It's like 8 hours a day, 8-9 hours a day. That's a lot of energy and it's a lot of time spent. Do something that you love to do. And I think it's interesting, isn't it, that we can peel back. When I look at, I wanted to be a police officer, but why did I want to be a police officer? I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people who struggled to help themselves. And I wanted to help people to have a voice who didn't have a voice. And I wanted to help people who had perhaps found themselves on one path that had potential and capability and that possibility to be on another path. It's exactly what I'm doing now as a coach in a very different way. But you can sometimes peel back those layers and look at what sits in underneath. And when you know what that is, that creates lots more opportunities rather than that sort of tunnel vision of one particular business or one particular role.
Yeah, I think people, and particularly kids, get a bit hung up on making a decision, but I've seen it described as squiggly careers lately. I think there's a podcast, actually, the Squiggly Career Podcast. And people go off in one direction because they think that's what they want, but then they can go off in a completely different direction. I mean, I did an accountancy and finance degree, became an accountant, and then very quickly realized I wanted to go down a different route. So I became a project manager, and now I work in communications. So, you know, I'm not even 40 yet, and I've had 3 sort of big career moves. So, I think people just get far too hung up. Just ask Rich as well, because he's got daughters that are sort of coming up to that age now where they need to decide, you know, thinking about what they want to do next. Rich, how do they feel?
Well, I got a 16-year-old, so she's in her first year at college at the minute, and my wife was interested in how you would answer this question, Zoe, because I think she was interested to see how you thought. And I do think sometimes a parent will put pressure on what do you want to do? What you should know what you want to do by now. But like Patch mentioned his job, I mean, my job, I left school, went to a YTS just learning basic programming, which was big back then. Got a placement in a company, got made redundant there after a year. Then I joined Hargreaves Lansdown as literally an office junior, just typing in names and addresses. Showed an interest in graphic design, because graphic design, so this is about 1994, wasn't really a big thing back then, graphic design. And I just took on that role as the in-house graphic designer, and then just snowballed from there. And 20 years later, I'm doing it as a proper job. So yeah, I do think at 16, you do know, you might know what you fancy, like I want to be a vet, and you might have an interest, but like Pat said, your life path can take a sudden fork in the road that can just force you somewhere else. And it is hard for a 16-year-old to know, even like mentioned, jobs out there might not even exist yet. So how do they know what jobs are even out there to say, I want to do that, I want to do this? So it is an interesting question. I think Kirsten's interested in the answer to this question.
And I think one thing that I've certainly worked through with people, and I think is fantastic, and I can, for anybody who's interested, pop a comment in and I can email it over. And I've seen people talk about it a lot more over the last couple of months, and that's the ikigai, which is finding your purpose or your reason for being. And I think even as a 16-year-old, you can start to fill that in. You won't have all of the answers, but it asks the questions around what you love to do, what you're good at, because they can be 2 different things. What the world needs that is important to you, that you're passionate about, and things that you can do that you can be paid for. And then when you start to bring all of those together, that can help not necessarily identify a career in itself, but it can start to help individuals to sort of narrow down some of the things that they enjoy and that they're good at, and it starts to show certain patterns. And that can be done at any age. I've done that with 16-year-old teenagers, and I've done that with people in their 50s and older that have never sat down and thought about it. So I think it can be done at any age, and I think it helps people to understand where their purpose is, where their passion is, what's important to them, and what to take into consideration. It's about opportunities, isn't it? And seeing those opportunities and seizing them, but being able to know what sort of opportunities that you are looking for. I
think that is the key, doing something you do enjoy, and like you say, you're not necessarily good at it, but it's something you enjoy. It's not all, I think people look at the salary, don't they, at the end of the day sometimes, or to have this big house, to have these nice holidays, I need to have this job. That ain't always the case, because obviously if everyone had the top jobs, there'd be no one doing the kind of the cleaning the streets, the kind of emptying the bins. This place would be a chaos, wouldn't it, if everyone had a top management, high flying job.
Yeah, and it's what success looks like for you. How do you want to spend your days? And for some people, it's managing people. For some people, it's making money. For some people, it's giving back to the community or wider. It's so different for different people, and there's a place for all of us, isn't there? And within that, so. And
also happiness as well. That people strive to be happy, and happiness then will bring the success. Absolutely. So it's well answered, Zoe.
It's a good first question, and I think in particular at the moment, it is that time where people are making decisions, but I think also, and with exam uncertainty, it's just adds in another level, doesn't it, of what does this mean, and what difference may this make in terms of what the next steps are. And certainly conversations with my son, we're adding in more options, because we don't know that all of the original options will be available. And I think but when you know what you want and you know what fits into those, it does make it a lot easier. So, yeah, great first question. Does that mean Rich has got the second one?
That's me now. Yeah. Which is the northernmost city in? No. My question is there a danger of setting yourself unachievable kind of goals? Kind of, I want to be a professional footballer, but really, you know your level's not there. So is there a danger of setting these goals that will never happen? And what would you say to the people who don't meet their goals, who are kind of really gutted that that goal wasn't achieved?
Is that the difference between a dream and a goal? I think that's the question.
Well, that's the thing,
whether or not it's realistic.
You tell your children, "Oh, never give up on dreams," blah blah blah. But obviously, you might know. Oh, I want to be an Oscar-winning actress. I'd love to. I've seen that film. I'd love to be her. As a parent, that's probably not going to happen. Obviously, it does happen to some people because it has happened. But if they get these knockbacks and they don't achieve it, then what would you say to that person to pick them up, kind of thing?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because the last thing anybody wants to ever do is to dampen somebody's dreams of what they feel is possible. And I think we should encourage people to reach high and reach for what's, what they feel passionate about. And that it's that element of judgment and our own ego, I guess, to a point where we don't feel it's possible. But is that for us to share with other people of what we feel is possible and what they feel passionate about. I think for me the conversation I would probably focus around, okay, what can you do that would help you still work towards that dream, but still has that feeling of accomplishment and success on that same journey? So you could still have professional footballer as the goal, but what else would you want to do that helps to take you closer to that? So you're still working towards it, but still gives you that feeling of success and achievement on that path, on that journey. And I think this is the conversation that I have with a lot of people is you have to enjoy the journey. So you can have a goal at the end of it. You can have that idea of what success is going to look like. But if you don't enjoy the journey, then it makes it very difficult to reach that goal. And sometimes when we're on the journey, the end goal changes. Either we change the end goal or situations change the end goal. But if you've enjoyed the journey, you haven't lost anything. You've still gained and you've still gained momentum and you've still moved forward. So I think for me, if I was having that conversation with somebody, it wouldn't be to focus on whether or not I feel that end goal is achievable. It would be that conversation around what else are they doing to help them to get there, but also that they will feel is part of that successful journey along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of guess what you mean. Yeah, you can't just sit back and it's going to happen just by dreaming it. You have got to kind of do the right, like I say, the right steps to actually achieve it. Yeah,
and I think there's dreams, goals, and visions, isn't there? And I think, but there's also a lot of action that needs to be taken. And I think there's, when you have a big goal, you can look to see who else has achieved that and what they've done to make that happen and what you might need to do to make that happen, and whether or not you feel that you can show up with that level of commitment and that level of discipline and motivation to make that happen. But also the realism of, okay, how much is this going to take, and how much is down to skill and talent, and how much of it is down to effort and showing up and that discipline and putting the work in that is required for you to get to that level. And I think sometimes it's not about the lack of skill and talent. The emotional investment might be there. They might really, really want it. But in reality, the amount of mental and physical energy that is going to take to make that happen and tap into the skills is not there. So that's the reality of it. But I think that's for the individual to work out. And it's, it's we should encourage people, but I think it's about encouraging people on the journey and not necessarily focus on the destination.
Yeah, I get that.
Does that make sense?
And with the professional football example, Rich, obviously, that's a lot of boys' dreams growing up, and it's one of those ones where only one in, I don't know the number, 1,000 will actually make it, maybe even more. But it's, as you say, Zoe, it's very hard to say, right, focus on something else. But, always just have a backup plan, I think, so carry on, continue your studies. I know professional footballers that are now coming out the other side, and because they did their A levels and because they got their qualifications whilst they were doing their youth team, youth academy stuff, they're now coming out the other side, being able to get into business and start their own businesses.
Well, that was kind of my next question, wasn't it? Out of the five, I was going to have two questions. That was going to be my next question: is there such a thing as a plan A goal and a plan B goal that works along like parallel? So obviously, if you fall off A, that doesn't happen. You've got B, or do you need to concentrate on A fully, and then B might be like a last minute panic? Can you do them both at the same time? Do you think? Can you?
Well, I think that's the interesting. That's the interesting question, isn't it? And you're talking to a parent of somebody who wants to be a professional basketballer, and that is often not the conversation, but conversations around that of, okay, this is what you want to spend your time doing, this is how you want to earn an income. But actually, for a lot of people who are self-employed, it's good to have more than one income stream. So it's also good to utilize the other talents and skills that you have. So it's not necessarily a second option. It's how else can you make that option work for you. So yes, you want to be able to play basketball. So yes, that means that there's a certain path to follow to be able to make that happen. But also, like you said, there's basketball has a lifespan. So what would you plan to do after that? But also, what would you plan to do alongside that? So how else could you use talents and skills, and how else might you make income alongside that? And so I think it's how you can combine some of those things to make them work. So I think there's quite often, dependent on what the goals are, I think we can work for an A and a B at the same time. One of the conversations I've had with people this week actually is, we obviously January, a month where lots of people are setting goals, and lots of people have a number of goals. So they'll have a lifestyle goal, they might have a professional goal, they might have a more sort of health and well-being goal. And quite often they'll say, have I got too many goals? Am I trying to do too much? And my question is always, until you break it down into how you need to show up for that daily, weekly, monthly, it's very hard to tell whether or not those work together, or whether or not you need almost separate pots of energy to make those happen. So some goals fit quite nicely together. So it might be an A and a B goal, but the activities and tasks and the things that you need to do to make both A and B happen are quite often similar. So you can work on them at the same time. So it might be two options at the end, but how you show up, so the things that you need to do each day, each week, each month to keep the momentum going to make that happen, ultimately feed into both of those goals. So I think, again, tying it into where there's a theme, where there's things that they can do for both of those things that then mean you've got an option and a choice at the end of it. But I think the challenge here is also how much of this is in your control, because with some of these jobs that you're talking about, like you said, it is a very small percentage. And so how a coach or team make their selection is not in your control. But what is in your control is the effort and the energy, the training, the discipline, everything that you do to show up for that. So if you refocus into, okay, what can you do to help you get there? But ultimately, it's that acceptance mindset, isn't it? That not all of it is in your control. Not all of it will be your decision. And, you've got injury, and, look at COVID this year for sports people who are a professional sports person who can't play the game. So they've had to be able to tap into other skills, other ways of making money, other ways of spending their time. So this isn't just necessarily about being good enough to make it. Sometimes this is about, okay, in reality, sometimes things happen that are not in your control. What else have you got that you can tap into to do that? And I think COVID has been a great example of, you can be at the top of your game, but the world locks you down and says you can't play. So what are you going to do? How are you going to spend your time? So I think it's been a great example. It's certainly made some conversations a bit easier. It's like, okay, so what would you do in this scenario? How else would you be able to tap in and do that? Because most of us don't want to sit at home and do nothing. So what else would you want to be able to do?
Cool. Shall I go on to the next question? So mine's kind of linked a little bit to what you were saying just then, Zoe. At the moment, I'm finding that people are generally setting short-term goals because of the situation we're in. We're living sort of day to day, week to week, month to month.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to set long-term goals when the future is quite squiggly. Squiggly again. Yeah. But how important is it for people to still set longer term goals?
I think it is. If you are somebody who normally sets longer term goals, I think that's still important. If you're not somebody who's ever set long term goals, it probably doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So I know that I have always found it a big challenge to answer the question of where do you see yourself in 3 years or 5 years. I'm just trying to get through the next 3 months. That's about as far as my planning stretches. So for me, that long-term goal has never been there, apart from as a child wanting to be a police officer. That's probably the only the ever long-term goal I've set. So even when I went into a different job, I wasn't thinking about, okay, I'm going to take this job because it will lead to this, to this, to this. I just saw a job that I liked the look of, wanted to challenge myself, went for that job. And then when I started to get a bit bored, I'd look for the next thing. It's not something I've ever done. And even running a business now, although I have an idea of what I want to achieve over the next 12 months, I only have a plan 3 months at a time. So I know you mentioned the Post-its when we switched on this evening. This is just 3 months of planning. I have an idea of what follows, but the level of detail is not past the 3 months. And from a business perspective, that helps me because it means 3 months ahead, we've got a fairly good idea. So when I did this January, February, March, even though the lockdown happened in the first week, you've got an idea that by March, between now and March, life will look like this. So I can plan for that. By the time I come to plan for the next 3 months, towards the end of March, I'll have an idea of what's going to happen in the world next. So it means that I can plan for a reality that I've got more information on, rather than trying to plan ahead. And for me, that creates the space for opportunities as well, because I'm not tunnel vision in what I want to achieve that I miss out on other opportunities, but I do have enough of direction and focus that I don't see every opportunity as something that I should go for or could go for. So I think if you've always set long-term goals, it's good to have that, but focus your planning on shorter milestones within those goals. But if you're not somebody who's ever had long-term goals, it probably doesn't make any difference because you're probably much more in the moment and the shorter future anyway. But I think if you have got long-term goals, don't stop aiming for them, because this isn't going to be forever. This is a temporary solution. It feels like a lifetime at the moment, but in a couple of years we'll look back on this and it'll be an 18-month to 2-year period, which is such a short time frame for most of us in a lifespan. So this isn't going to be forever. So we do still want to be looking ahead. We do still want to have the goals, but I think set yourself shorter milestones to work for, with that knowing what you know now, and then you can adapt that as time goes on, and we know more with what's going on.
Once goals are achieved, or you get to a position where you've satisfied that need, at what point, in life do people generally stop setting goals? Because, as I said at the start, I became an accountant, then I wanted to become a project manager, and then I want to get more into communications. And I guess as time progresses, and then you sort of approach retirement, is it still important to sort of set goals even into retirement?
I think it is. I do think it is. I think, especially if you've always been somebody who's done that, if you're somebody who's always been working towards something, to suddenly stop that, I think is quite a significant change in amongst other significant change. And I think, my retirement's a long way out. I love what I do, and I'd like to think that it just tapers off rather than a sudden, hit a birthday milestone and just, pack it all in. But I think, with, like we said earlier, work is a significant amount of time that we spend. It's, it's our mental energy, it's connections with people, it serves a lot of our psychological needs, our emotional needs is fulfilled in work. So when that stops, if you stop planning for other things as well, then it's, I think it's very nice, isn't it, that probably that first couple of months to enjoy doing nothing and enjoy doing very little. But maybe that's the goal. Maybe that's the goal that you set, that you're going to enjoy for a certain period of time, and then you're going to find things that you do. I think the dynamics of the goals change, but I think having something to work for, that sense of purpose and fulfillment, is still really important. And especially when you take work away, I hear lots of people who worry about retirement, retirement, like I said, fulfills a lot of our human needs in terms of connection and significance and routine, variety, all of these things that are so important to us. Work ticks the box for those. And so when you take that away, you need to find that elsewhere. And I think that's where setting goals can help you to do that, of how do you meet those needs.
I guess the blend of goals. So, at the age of sort of 20 to 30, your business goals and your career goals probably take up 75% of your goals, whereas 25% is fitness, health, that sort of thing. I guess that combination and blend sort of shifts as you get older, and once you hit retirement, the goals of walking 10,000 steps a day, for example, would be one that would hit the mark.
I was going to say it'd be different set goals, wouldn't it? Then it'd be retirement. Well, you'd be working, and then you might think, oh, I'd love to go to 3 days a week. You do that goal, then it's like downsizing a house. I want to move to the coast, and then what I do traveling. So I think your goals continue, but obviously just different goals, like Pat says, per decade of your life, kind of thing, I guess.
I think it's what purpose do goals serve for you? If goals help give you focus and direction and something to work towards, and it gives you, a way to spend your time, that you've got that routine or variety, whatever that is, or it's a way of connecting with people. I think it depends what the purpose of your goals has always been, or has been in that stage of life. And I think that's really important to continue. Retirement is there to be enjoyed, isn't it? So but that also takes some planning. So it's planning. What do you, we work a long time, don't we? We work many years to look forward to retiring, so you want to be able to make the most of it. And I think we some of us have experienced that slower pace through lockdown, but how easy it is to become quite lethargic and quite kind of, it's very easy, isn't it? That slower pace that kind of has that effect, doesn't it, of we slow down, so then we become more lethargic, we feel less like doing things, and that's when potentially we put ourselves at risk of things like anxiety and depression and social anxiety of leaving the house, because we become more isolated. So I think it is really important. That's not to say that that's what retirement is, but I think we work a long time to want to be able to enjoy it, and having things to look forward to and plans that we have. But like I said, the dynamics of the goals change, and it might be time for yourself, time with grandchildren, time with family, time spent traveling. It is going to be it's probably more a bucket list than a goals list, I would imagine.
But it's not until this lockdown I've suddenly realised that I think when you do retire, you still need goals to have reason to get out of bed, because like this lockdown at the minute, obviously this time of year, 4 o'clock, I finish work, it's dark. There's been times when I've had the TV to myself, I've got the world to my oyster, and I just can't, you just find yourself flicking through, there's just nothing to do. And I think that is, retirement sounds always amazing, I can do whatever I want, but I think you still need goals within that retirement to achieve something, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Cool. I think you've asked your second question there, Rich, haven't you? You sort of stuck it on the end.
I was efficient in my question asking.
No, very good segue, Rich. Well done. My last question, Zoe, is around goals, and I know, obviously, having gone to university and done finance degree, SMART objectives, SMART specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time constraint, I think was the T. I don't think they always have to be objective and measurable. I think sometimes goals can be subjective. So have you got any examples from yourself or from clients that you've worked with where you've set some subjective goals as opposed to measurable ones?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually that the people that I've worked with or I'm working with at the moment, that I'm seeing an increasing number of less tangible goals. So things like how they want to feel, how they want life to be. So I'm reading a book called The Happiness Project by Gretchen Rubin, I think. I will double check the name. It's a really interesting book. I've got it on Audible at the moment for when I go out for my walks. And so it's called The Happiness Project, and she has set herself 12 commandments, and then each month she focuses on each of these areas. And it's a really interesting book in that she doesn't just talk about what she does and how she integrates it into her family life and her working life, but she also talks about the case studies and some of the sort of research and science behind it. But it's really interesting how when we've talked this through with clients, or when it's come up in workshops, how people really like the idea of having a month to focus on different things. So a month to, be more grateful, more appreciative, more aware of all of the things that they love and that they have. And then the next month, they're going to focus on rest and sleep and making sure that they have that time out and they have that slower pace and that they have a good sleep routine and those things. And then the next month they're going to focus on being more active. And so they're starting to think about, okay, if my goal in 12 months time is more about being more happy and healthy, what do I want that to look like? How do I want my life to be different in 12 months time, and how can I make that happen over the period of 12 months? So it's really interesting because a lot of the sort of goals workshops and things that I do are very much around 12 months, working back from 12 months, how you split it down into your quarters and then your months and then your weeks, so that you know what you need to achieve by when to help keep you on track. But with these less tangible goals, it's very hard to go, okay, in 6 months time, what do you want to be able to achieve? And changing that question round to, in 6 months time, how would you like life to already be different? How would you like to see things are already starting to change? What are the key areas that, there'll be some things that you want to change that can maybe wait until later on in the year, but there'll be some things that you want to start changing now. So what do you want to focus on first, so that by the end of the first quarter, you're already starting to see a difference? So it's a really different conversation this year. And I think this is probably the first time that I've noticed it with a few people. More people wanting to, feel different about life and have those sort of less tangible goals. It's great to see, but I think, I do think the lockdowns and changes have really changed people's focus on what's important. People are seeing things very different. Perspective is changing. People, I think, are really starting to notice what they miss when things get taken away, what they notice is different when they can't do certain things or see certain people. And so I think that's really highlighted not just what we are grateful for and what we appreciate, because we know what it's like when it's not there, but also, being able to slow life down a little bit and make some changes around that. So it's great for me, because it makes it so much more interesting for people to work with, rather than those more sort of numerical goals or certain things. And it's always great to see people achieve, but when you hear these kind of goals of how significant those small changes are, because they're talking about how life feels different. So it's not necessarily a measurable SMART type goal. It's this is what's different for me now. This is how it would have been before. This is what's different for me now. And that's not always measurable, but it's significant.
Well, and it's going to sort of change the future of study as well, I think, because there'll be less your goals must be SMART. Think about some of these things that you've just said. And I've been studying in work similar to Gretchen Rubin. It's The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker.
Okay.
And that's another one that you should definitely have a look at. It talks about some similar things from what you've said, but it's about celebrating those small wins and then building up to the big wins.
Yeah.
Celebrating gratitudes, all of that sort of stuff is really interesting, and you can put some of what you've learned from books into your work life, into your home life, and it just sort of is basically saying that happiness brings success, and success doesn't bring happiness is the underlying message. It's really interesting because my goals are often subjective. I want to set up a podcast. Was a thought that entered our head six years ago. I didn't say I want to do it by this date and have this many views and that many viewers and that many downloads. It's just having that goal, but not necessarily attaching a time constraint to it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I'm incredibly impatient. So my time constraint is I've decided I really like to do this, and so now I'm going to get that done. I had a conversation with somebody this morning and came up with an idea, and by lunchtime I'm like, right, okay, that's that done. So my time constraint can't require too much patience, which is probably why I find it difficult to set long-term goals, because if I've decided that I want something, 3 years and 5 years, far too far away. I need it now. Now I know I want it. That's it. So that's probably why that's probably why it works for me to set the shorter term goals. But also, I think that's what we talked about on your podcast, is that I like uncertainty. I like disruption and changing. I think that's the background of working in the police, is that becomes your comfort zone of not knowing what's going to happen and just getting in the moment and dealing with what you're dealing with. And so I think that's probably where a lot of that comes from, is that my sort of all of my adult years, in that environment of not knowing what's coming next. So if you need to do something, or you've decided you want to do something, you kind of need to get it done now, because you don't know, that day can't necessarily be planned around it. But I think in that disruption, I love to see the opportunities that come out of that. And I love that chaos forces you to look at things from different perspective, and so you see things in a way that you might not have seen them before. So we all tick slightly differently, don't we?
Yeah, you deal with uncertainty very well, because we've asked you 5 questions now that you didn't know what was coming, and you've answered all of them very well.
Great questions too. And what I love about these is the conversation that comes out of it, because it doesn't feel like there's a pressure to answer the questions in a certain way, because I love the conversation that comes out of it, and different guests with different circumstances and backgrounds bring different questions and topics in, and so it's great for me to be able to talk about things that I might not necessarily get to talk about otherwise. So yeah, Absolutely. It's great. And I hadn't counted that was 5.
I did too. I did 2 and 1, and Patch did 3. But I find this useful, is because obviously having a child 16 and 12 is I can go to her now with a bit of advice, saying it doesn't matter, you don't know exactly what you got to do now, but blah blah. And like you said, get these goals. If you want to achieve something, you you then set yourself goals to be able to achieve it. So, and also I need to, it's also go back to the wife, because I think the wife kind of puts a bit of pressure on her. So go back to the wife and say, look, it's not that easy just to say, I want to do this and that's it. You can, your life does change quite quickly.
I mean, it might be worth asking the question of what's important to your wife to know. So there's possibly a level of certainty there that she's trying to gain from this, and
I think that's the thing.
It might just be around direction or a focus, or that the next step decision is being
I think it's like security in it. Kind of, you obviously want your child to get that job, get that house, get that kind of. It's just mapping their future out for them sometimes, but it's not that easy. It isn't that straightforward.
No, so we're in the process of doing UCAS applications at the moment. I say he is in the process of doing UCAS applications, and we all parent very differently, but I know I have always been and made a real attempt to try and take that step back and give him that space to make the decisions that he feels is right for him. And interestingly, because he's 18 now, so I'm not being given as much information as I would have done a year ago, or when he was younger. So I'm asking lots of questions at the moment because there's a genuine curiosity, but also that parental concern around, okay, when the deadlines, do you need help with anything? And he said to me today, you're asking a lot of questions. And I was like, because I have lots, I'm gathering that information because it's not being offered. And he said, but you've never been this parent before. I can't cope with all of these questions. So it's like, okay, I will take a step back, but you need to keep me updated on this, and this, and then that means that then I won't have as many questions. I'm not asking 10 questions to try and find out one bit of information, because there's just that reassurance that I need that he is on top of it.
So what would you say then if there was one parent like that, which is me, and the other parent is very much, I need to know everything. Blah, blah, blah. You've got two parents, basically, two different parents, basically. So one's sitting back, let you kind of get on with it, learn from your mistakes, blah, blah, blah. And you've got the other one who's real intense, real kind of, I want to know everything. So how does that balance out?
Is there a compromise of something in between? Like you can sit down at one point in a week and have that conversation for her to give an update to Aunt that might preempt some of the questions that you have, and then a space for you to ask those questions. Can you do it rather than that sort of when it's in your head to ask the questions, of maybe giving her the lead to arrange, have that time where you sit down and have that conversation. So it's more on, it's that balance, isn't it, of interrogation
or a healthy interest.
Yes, and I think that's the thing, is helping her to see that this is about having a healthy interest. This is not, you're not trying to control the decision that she makes, but as a parent, you have a responsibility to make sure that certain things happen, and that you want to support her in that and get her to try and take the lead on helping you to do that. Just asking the questions of, okay, what support do you need from us? And it might be that she asks for some space to be able to think it through, but it's that conversation. 16 is such a difficult age, isn't it? Because it
is, because you're trying too hard to help, but it's not always helpful.
Well, and also we expect them to start responding as adults, but they don't necessarily have all of the tools in the toolkit to be able to do that. And so it's that transition period, isn't it, of where we're helping them to learn those tools to be able to manage those conversations. But at the same time, it's teaching them those tools, but then also giving them space to use them and get it wrong and play about with it and learn. And it's an interesting transition as a parent, that's for sure. It
is.
I've got very different challenges. I'll wait for the 10 years time.
Yeah, don't wish them away, Patch. Don't wish them away.
It flies. It does fly by. It really does. But I think it also depends on how you see parenting. For me, parenting is about growing them into an adult that can be independent and can make those decisions. And that means that sometimes you have to step back and give them that space to make the decisions and learn and get it wrong and fail and learn and try it out different ways. And that's tough sometimes.
It's funny what you're both saying, because my daughter is 6. She's in year 1, and obviously homeschooling at the moment, every little bit of work that she does, she can't wait to come and show me or show my wife. And 10 years later, you'd be lucky if you got a word out of what they learned today. It's funny how they go on that journey, isn't it?
Yeah. As a parent, it's, when I mentioned earlier about how work fulfills certain needs, as a parenting fulfills certain needs. Again, it's that connection, love, significance. We play a big role. So I think as our children get older, and they don't need us in the same way, they still need us, but that how they need us is very different. And we put all of the focus on them, don't we? That they have to learn, they have to adapt, they have to grow, but we have to learn and adapt and grow in that parenting role with it. And I have one child, so that happened quite quickly. And to be able to, he went off to college at 16 in Reading, so left home at 16. So that time of the parenting role changing happened really quickly, and also in quite a big difference at an age I wasn't expecting to have to work through that, and I was expecting to do it now at 18, not at 16. But the parenting role changed, and I found myself asking a lot, okay, what do you need from me? How can I support you in this, in various different ways? But okay, I've not done this before, so how can I, what do you need me to do, and what role do I play in all of this? And then taking that step back is so hard, because everything else up until that point is about you stepping in and doing it for them, isn't it? And then all of a sudden it's like, get off, I want to do this, I need to do this on my own. And I think that's the hardest part, isn't it, as a parent, in that role of stepping back and letting them start to live their life for them.
Yeah, exactly. They got to make some mistakes along the way, and they got to learn from those mistakes.
Yeah, but it's those first couple of things, isn't it, where you can't make it better. You as a parent, you can't fix it and you can't make it better, and all you can do is just be there for them. And I think, it's tough, but that's part of it, isn't it? Because you then see them work through that adversity, or they work through that challenge, and then they start to learn their tools that go in the toolkit, and you see them start to use that in different ways, and that's part of their growth and part of their evolution, if you like.
It's a long journey.
Oh yes.
I remember my friend a few years ago, his kids are like kind of mid-20s. He had his kids quite young, but he said, I think from the ages like kind of 13 to 16, you kind of lose your kids for a bit. They kind of obviously go off in their bedrooms. You don't hear from them, but then they do come back now at 18. They kind of come back into they start watching the things you're watching on TV and things like that. So they do come back. Actually, I know they.
What's that for pocket money?
I know, but in a minute, Cara will be upstairs on her laptop. She bought her laptop for Christmas, so she's watching things that we're not watching in the front room. And why would she? I watch that. Whereas the 16-year-old, she's now starting to watch things that I watch, like 8 out of 10 cats do Countdown and Taskmaster, things like that. So she has kind of come back into the family kind of watching TV bit. So I think you will lose them for a few years, and then let's see them step back in again.
And I've had this conversation with someone this week, a two-parent family with 2 teenage children, of how do we as parents respect that they want to spend time on their own, but also that we as parents want to spend quality time as a family. And they've come up with a great, weekend challenge. So each member of the family is taking it in turns to plan something for an allotted family time at the weekend, but because all 4 of them are taking it in turns to make those plans, it means that each of them gets to choose something that they enjoy doing, but the family have that buy-in that they will get involved. So, and then as long as they do that, then they are taking a step back the rest of the time and giving them that space to have time on their own. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, but it's finding what works for you and with your children, isn't it?
Well, we got a dog, so we try and drag them out with the dog.
Yeah.
Because the dog won't go out with me. I try and take her out on my own, and she literally go to the end of the road. But as a family, she will go for the full walk.
Yeah.
So that's a good excuse for us to go. And it was the youngest who wanted the dog in the first place. So
it's finding those common interests, isn't it? That are still a common interest, even though lots of other things are changing. Fantastic. Such amazing questions and a great conversation too. So
it's been really helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for coming on, and thank you for your time and great questions. So for those of you watching or listening, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, keep posted, keep up to date on everything that's happening. There is one of these scheduled in every week, so there's lots of new content coming. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on anything new that's coming out. Guys, thank you very, very much. We will tag you in so people can find you and come and check out your podcast as well. And we will call it there. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching and listening. Thanks, guys, for coming in, and we'll see you all very soon.
Take care.